I'm Jason Hiles, Dean of GCU's College of Theology. This is the third and final introductory video that we've put together to launch this year's One Foundation series. Over the next few months, we'll unpack this year's theme, which is Kingdom Treasures. Kingdom Treasures amounts to an exploration of the resources that the Christian worldview offers for a life of faith, hope, and love during a time that is marked by global pandemic, political conflict, racial tension, and intense human suffering. In a prior video, I introduced the topics that we'll cover during our One Foundation Dialogue series, which is a series of live events that will begin streaming on October the 12th. I'll wrap up the introductory content with this video. To begin, I want to draw your attention to a couple of resources that may be of interest to you as you engage the topics at hand. First, be sure to check out theologycommons.org. This site is a new repository of Christian worldview and One Foundation resources that are available without charge to all who are interested in mining the rich resources that Christianity has to offer. You can find a full ebook from Christian Worldview 101 and Christian Worldview 316, as well as an audiobook that we've also made available on Apple Podcasts and other podcast platforms. All of the One Foundation content we're producing this year will appear on the site as it is created, so subscribe and stay connected. You may also want to follow Living Faith, which is the College of Theology blog. We're relaunching two popular series on the blog this year, and both will track with this year's One Foundation theme. Theology Thursday will focus on kingdom diversity and will interact with Christians living at other times and in other places who have faced challenges that are similar, at least in principle, to those we're facing in our day. The Dear Theophilus series will engage common questions that arise in connection with topics we'll address in the live events. Dear Theophilus and Theology Thursday should give you plenty of opportunities to explore this year's theme in depth, so please check them out. Before we get into the live events, let me offer one final introductory thought. The theme Kingdom Treasures will explore what a life of faith, hope, and love looks like for the Christ follower. But it is important to point out from the start that faith, hope, and love have long been considered theological virtues, which means that a few words about the nature of a virtue may be helpful. People commonly refer to values when discussing the goals and aspirations of particular societies and institutions. For example, one may refer to American values or Christian values or the value of a company like Apple or Microsoft. Values have to do with the things that a particular group or organization considers to be important, worthwhile, and valuable. Within the Christian worldview, humans are believed to be creatures who were created uniquely in the image and likeness of God. As a result, one major Christian value relates to the sanctity or sacredness, we might say, of human life. The principle of cura personalis, which was described in a previous video, is rooted in this value, since the principle has to do with caring for the whole person as a creature with immense value in God's sight. Thus, the value placed on human life by the Christian worldview entails the goal of esteeming human life highly by protecting and honoring human dignity. Virtue, by contrast, may be understood as a characteristic or trait that belongs to a person. Virtuous people are capable of honoring and upholding values because a virtuous person possesses the sort of character that enables him or her to live consistently in ways that align with noble values. Growing in virtue, then, is the means by which individuals and groups make progress toward the ideals and the aspirations that they believe to be valuable and worthy. In short, we might say that in order to do the right things, we must be the right kind of people. This is where the theological virtues come in. In a famous passage from the book of 1 Corinthians, the Apostle Paul sets forth the virtues of faith, hope, and love as the primary areas of focus for a young church filled with immature Christians. The church in Corinth was rife with infighting, dissension, immaturity, and arrogance. In the midst of sorting out this mess, Paul simply reminds them that all of the gifts and abilities they valued highly were empty and annoying without love. He then makes the case for love as fundamental to the Christian life. He writes this, quote, "Love is patient and kind. Love does not envy or boast. It is not arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice in wrongdoing, but rejoices with the truth. Love bears all things, believes all things, endures all things." As Paul's first readers worked through these lines, it is not hard to imagine that they felt a sense of guilt and perhaps shame that they had fallen short with respect to the virtuous life Paul was describing. Perhaps many of us reading this passage today feels that there is a big gap between the values of the Christian faith and our own character. It is easy to be impatient and unkind. It is difficult to bear all things, endure all things, and love consistently. But Paul doesn't leave the reader without hope. In fact, he connects the three theological virtues of faith, hope, and love in a plea for those in Corinth to grow up into all that Christ has called them to be. The lessons that God had for the people living in Paul's day led them to grow in their faith. They learned to trust God and to do what He asked of them for the sake of others. They learned to hope in things that they could not yet see in the midst of a fallen and broken world. And they learned to grow in their love for God and for one another. But in the moment when Paul wrote the first letter to the Corinthians, he simply began by reminding them that, quote, faith, hope, and love abide, these three, but the greatest of them is love, end quote. All else will eventually pass away, so it is in our best interest to focus on the twin commands to love the Lord our God and also to love our neighbors as ourselves. If you are anything like me, you still have some room for growth. Thankfully, God continues to teach His people and to form them into the perfect image of His Son. In His mysterious ways, God continues to place us in positions that require us to learn what it means to truly trust Him, to place our hope in Him above all things, and to love just as Christ Jesus loves us. There's much more to say about these things and much more to learn, so I invite you to join us all year long as we explore kingdom treasures. I look forward to seeing what God will do on our campus in days to come, and I hope you will join us as we explore these things together.
GCU's One Foundation supports the university's commitment to biblical Christianity, including doctrine and practices deeply rooted in the faith that was once for all delivered to the saints. For more information about GCU, visit gcu.edu. Additional One Foundation content and Christian Worldview resources related to the Christian Worldview are available at theologycommons.org.